how's it looking there? Because I've got to say, at Paddington Station in London, far more trains than in the last dispute.
Well, Andrew, here this morning there are still some services, but it's a massive disruption to the normal services that we see here. We've still got some running between Lichfield, Trent Valley and Birmingham New Street to Wolverhampton, for example, but it's just local services, really, but they're only running 1 an hour. So for cities like this, which has a lot of people that commute into it for business, this is one of the youngest cities in the UK, in fact, the youngest city in the UK, and so there's a lot of people that come here, students that need to get into university, so it's not just business, but here education is also being affected by these rail disputes as well. In terms of like the longer distance trains, the likes of Advanti West Coast, Cross Country, they're all cancelled today. We've got West Midlands Railway and London North Western Railway services here aren't operating at all, but there are some minor services locally running have been running since 7 a.m. this morning and 7 p.m. this afternoon. But of course this disruption is going to continue and carry on. The RMT are in 2 disputes, one with Network Rail, where it represents 20,000 signallers and maintenance workers, and the others, of course, with the Rail Delivery Group, where it represents around 20,000 workers for 14 different railway operating companies. Now, of course, we've had those pay offers being rejected, and Mick Lynch tried to come to a compromise. He, of course, met with Hugh Merriman, the Rail Minister, yesterday, but of course nothing really came of that meeting. But Mick Lynch saying that he's always optimistic and that resolutions to disputes are about compromises. He said, we understand what the companies want and they understand what we need, so we need some sort of compromise on the conditions that they're putting forward. There was a picket line here for members of the RMT that work for Network Rail, although I must admit only 2 people actually turned up for the picket line here today. But speaking to one of them, he rejected in that vote the pay offer that was put forward to them by Network Rail, but he kind of cited more conditions. He said he didn't want to strike. He said over Christmas, he'd much rather have the pay in his pocket, but causing this disruption, he says, was the only way really to try and start to get the message across, which is something that a lot of RMT members across are saying. But one thing he did mention was that it's that the actual services and that threat of possible driverless trains that they're not happy about, and the thing he mainly cited to me was working conditions and the conditions as well as the pay. But disruption, as you mentioned, is going to continue until both sides can come to the negotiating table and try and work out a deal that suits both sides.